Okay, welcome everybody to another episode of the Tall Down Take New podcast. Today's episode, we are going to talk about whether or not is a country with low birth rate a good thing or a bad thing. So to give you an understanding of what was that, what the birth rate is basically an average. Shit, something again. God damn it.
Like the average rate of uh, pregnancies that are conceived
Ow,
in
is
that
that how it
year,
is?
right?
No, no. The birth rate is basically the number of lives birthed per thousand of population per year. I'm guessing they're taking an average of 1,000 women and see how often they get
Oh, okay,
pregnant per year.
yeah. So
Oh, that's
they
what a
create
birth
like the
rate is.
statistically accurate like number just to represent
Yeah.
it, right?
Yes. Well, there are many benefits to high and low birth rates. Yeah, what the hell is that? Shit.
Okay, I'm gonna give my opinion on this first. So for low birth rates, right? I think it really depends on the economic state of the country. You know, like if your economy is good and you have a low birth rate, that's actually really good. So you become one of the more richer countries because your economy can keep growing and you have less to worry about in terms of people, you know. But if you're like a larger country with a higher birth rate and with a strong economy, maybe it's still a good thing, but it really depends on how the government is processing everything. Like the US is a very rich country, literally the richest nation in the world, but the way the poverty levels are still high over there. There's still a lot of poverty. The minimum wage for them is still crap. So even though you have this high birth rate for them, which in Corona times, it actually came out in the news. In Corona times, the US birth rate has actually spiked up. So, like, even though you have all of this birth rate, you like it's not that well received in a way, and they already have a population of 300 million. It really just depends on their government actually how they handle the situation. That's my take on it, I guess.
I guess I can mostly agree with what you said. It's just surprising when you say that now in Corona times, like the birth rate in America is rising because like previously it's been on a downward trend. But I guess whether or
Yeah,
not a birth rate is considered good for a country, it really does depend on their like economic state. Because like if they're in a like a poorer economy and there's a higher birth rate, the chances of like these infants getting education, being able to get a job in the future, and the risk of overpopulation ultimately hurting, their economic progress, that's a risk. But then on the other hand, you have more developed economies, like you say now in Japan and in Korea. You have When you have a low birth rate, right, that gives rise to an aging population. And that in itself isn't a good thing because previously, right, if you look at the alternative of a country with a high birth rate, right, you need to spend resources on like care for these younger infants, more money on education, social services, this kind of thing. But in this alternative scenario of having an aging population due to a lower birth rate, right, you still have to pull these resources on, health services to take care of these older people. You have to increase the retirement age. And that's also another problem in itself. So I think the key is to strike a balance.
yeah.
I might associate a little fact that I think it was in 2019, South Korea suffered a decline so bad that their average was actually below one among 1,000. I think it was like what 0.89, was it? That's actually a really bad decline comparing to their previous year. I think it was 2018 where they were at least above 1 point something. I do understand that if I would say Korea is a kind of a how do I say this? South Korea.
Still, for
What was
any
it?
country, 1,000 is a very low statistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is why,
Ev-
like, you remember, like, after the 1990s, like, in the early 2000s, like, 2010s and shit like that, like, there was so many of these people who were, like, really worried about, like, the birth rate and how the Earth's going to be overpopulated and shit like that because the population keeps doubling in size. Well, it's been over 10 years, nearly 20 now, and the population is still 7 billion. It hasn't exponentially increased. It's actually decreasing all around the globe. So overpopulation is not even like a thing, except with some countries though.
Okay. Okay, it says the average birth rate per thousand is actually 18.5. These some of these are gonna get edited, right? Because I'm trying to read facts from Google. Hello, anybody there?
Yes. What is it?
Oh shit! I thought everyone just got disconnected. Or I was the one getting disconnected.
Oh no.
But yeah, what do you guys think would? Oh yeah, all right, fine. Sure. What do you think is? What do you think are the advantages of a country with like very low birth rate?
Well, the government doesn't have much to worry about, I guess. There's not too much shit going around. If you have a country with low birth rate, that's kind of a given. But it really depends actually. It really depends on how the government is handling shit. Like, I can give you a really good example. Like, one of the richest countries in the world, Luxembourg, the one with like the highest GDP. Yeah? Is it the one with the highest GDP or like the second highest one? Which one do
We'll
you know?
have to confirm that.
Yeah, okay. So Luxembourg is such a small country that's so goddamn rich that like it's just a benefit for their citizens because they're rich. They live in a rich country with a low birth rate, so everyone can live comfortably. They can focus a lot more on their economic growth. And then you have countries like India, for example, which is like, oh, that's like a textbook case of overpopulation. It's insane. It's literally over a billion. And there's a reason why 70% of the
Okay, to
country is still
confirm, right?
rural. Yeah.
Luxembourg has the highest, like a report in 2015, it says that Luxembourg has the highest GDP per capita in the European Union. So yes, it is
Yeah.
very rich, and
It
it
is
is also
very,
very small.
it is incredibly rich. Yeah. So that's the thing, you see. It's rich and it is incredibly small. So that means all of its citizens can live comfortably. But like if you take like an insanely large country like India, where 70% of the country is still rural, only 30% actually has technological advancements. Like like even 30% for them is like over 400 million people. That's insane. So
It's still a lot of people. So
it's
for them, a
still a lot
lower
of people.
birth rate will be a good thing.
Yeah, actually, a low like for them, yes. But like, let's say Luxembourg had a high birth rate, it still will take years for it to actually affect the economy in any way because it's such a rich country. India's just like in the middle, I guess. And like, what
All
if
right,
the birds happen
like
in a rural area? It's not like they get much from it.
okay, what do you guys think is like the reason as to like why a country may have a low birth rate? What do you think?
My opinion is just that, I mean, especially the youngsters these days, they just don't want to have children. I mean, it's not just for a specific country. It's literally just like a normal thing now. You know. I guess that's one thing.
I think maybe you
think,
could like. Now, Ming, you go ahead.
in my opinion, I think it's probably financial issues. Plus, now during the MCO period, where it's all about survival at this point, I doubt anyone really has time or any financially powerful enough to support support the children in our current times of trouble, I guess. And yeah, I guess some people are just afraid to have a children because they are afraid of how it might impact them in a way, either it's negatively or positively. But I guess they're not exactly up to taking that gamble of having a children because it does put quite a bit of strain on the financial power. And I guess that's my opinion of how I see why people would not want to have children these days.
Right. Okay. Here's my take. I think like you can extend on what you guys said. Basically, I think why we can attribute the fact that young children or younger people don't want to have children is due to the fact that like more young people are having access to education. They are also more financially stable and also maybe we could say more ambitious. And it gets to a point where these people take their careers more seriously, and especially in developed nations where even in these times of trouble and even just before this pandemic, like the cost of living in most developed countries is staggeringly high. So the fact that these people have to sometimes even work like two jobs just to be able to survive with their own salary, the prospect of like trying to support not just two people but like three or four other individuals on like a single income is really difficult. But alternatively, right, you could look at this uh talking about countries with higher birth rates, right? It's usually lower income countries such as countries in Africa, maybe third world countries such as Myanmar, like for example, like these countries with higher birth rates, right? You can attribute that to also the lack of education and lack of infrastructure for these individuals, because I think when you don't have that concern of like trying to advance your career and trying to like work within a budget, and also like the lack of birth control, the lack of sex education, I think this is when there's no real control over how much of the population there is. There's no real like family planning. Like you look at the like when people get more educated, I think, right, you're right to say that people these days like they tend to think about whether the income they're making and whether they are physically, financially, and emotionally capable of supporting a family. And I think people in like lower income countries just don't do that. And that's why you have that big disparity in birth rate.
Yeah, that is a good point. I mean, like one of the most easiest examples is like Singapore. For a Singaporean, right? Like for them, their living costs might seem normal, but like when an outsider goes to Singapore, it is ridiculous the amount they're paying for the stuff that they're getting. And like even for Singaporeans also, it could be like we're not Singaporeans, so we don't really know. But like I bet that it could cause some struggle just based on how stuff is priced over there. And it's only because they are a really well developed nation and their population is actually really high considering the land mass, that it's so small. It's like smaller than every state in Malaysia, and somehow they have 5 million people. That is ridiculous. The like take a country like Ireland. Ireland also is a very high GDP country, and like that has 5 million people and it's so large. It's literally an entire island in Europe, and Singapore has 5 million people and it's so small. It is ridiculous. So there's some sectors that they just can't focus on, like cars and stuff. It's ridiculously priced. The taxes are like insane. And I guess it's a textbook definition of like an overpopulated country, I guess, in a way. Is it? In terms of landmass, do you think it's an overpopulated country? Because in my opinion, it seems fine for them, that is. do you guys think about it?
I think it's still acceptable, like for the time being. But you do realize that Singapore is really small though. And the fact that if you want to have like more new developments, you want to have more housing in Singapore, like in the long run, the only alternative would be to, try to like maybe reclaim nearby islands and stuff. So maybe now it's still fine, but 50, 60 years down the line, we might have to reevaluate that statement.
They but they don't have to. They don't have to go and conquer another territory. They like it really just depends on their birth rate. It's either gonna screw them over or it's gonna be okay for them. And the death rate actually, it depends on the net ratio of how many people are going away and how many people are coming in.
Yeah, true, but like like there are actually efforts like done by Singapore in like recent history to actually like reclaim land. It's not like it doesn't look like Singapore going and like conquering another country, but it's like how Singapore is an island, and there are lots of like tropical islands like off the coast of Johor, right?
Yeah,
So
the
these are what
Malacca
the
Strait there,
efforts
right?
are. So Singapore is like trying to reclaim land around this area, these small like islands, more or less. Like Singapore has reclaimed the sixth most land from seas and wetlands of any nation on earth. So that says a lot. Their country is very small. So
It is.
it's not like a pressing concern, but I guess like they're playing safe, planning for the future. Because even if these islands are not going to be inhabitable, right? You can like there's a lot of like ecological benefits to it. Like you can not just take all the like the natural resources from those islands, but also like maybe in the future you could export workers there. Maybe you can move like certain factories or certain like industrial processes over to like another island, make space within like the main Singapore island for like residential areas for things for people to live. But yeah, like you said, it mostly just depends on the birth rate and the death rate, more or less.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
In a larger country, I think that's just completely flipped on its head.
We talked about the
That's the way to sum
advantages,
that up.
right? So
Means
should we talk about the disadvantages?
Sure.
All right.
of
Of low
high
birth
birth rate
rates. No, low birth rate.
or disadvantages.
Yes.
I don't know actually. Is there really a disadvantage?
Well, I would
Yeah.
give I would actually say it's more of like what the ratio of the native people to the immigrants, I guess. Looking at it from like a country with low birth rate, how do I say, if they do not really like try to improve or to make it into a higher birth rate, you might see a really, really large decline of the natives to the country, like by a lot. And then by then your population will just drastically decrease to the point where the ratio doesn't like, how to say, it doesn't seem like it's your country anymore. Like imagine a country that doesn't have a lot of its natives, and most of the population is actually made out of immigrants and all that. I guess that would be a
You're
disadvantage of having low
literally
birth
talking
rate.
about the United States. You are literally talking about the United States.
Really?
Well, at
Yeah,
least
it
they're
was a
like,
native land, and then yeah.
at least like now maybe they'll become
Well,
more
there is traces of
immigrant
them,
friendly. But it's true of like
I
most countries.
guess.
Like it's like the US, there's Australia, there are like the orang asli Malaysia. Like throughout history, we always see these immigrants or more powerful people coming over and just marginalizing this orang asli. And then yeah, even Ninja's right. It gets to a point where since these people aren't, reproducing, they just get marginalized even more and then eventually get wiped out. But then alternatively, right, let's say you're a country who's like a very hardline conservative and you're very anti-immigrant. What happens when the birth rate is even lower? So you're not just losing out on immigrants being able to fill up your jobs, but you're also just losing out on people. And then you have just this large overall shortage of workers, and that's just going to harm the economy even more.
Yeah, I agree with that. That is actually quite true. That's why I think low birth rate is pretty bad. You can take South Korea for example. Like the birth rate is below what 1 point. It's below one. Like I heard that it's actually really that bad. And then some people will suspect that Koreans may face extinction at what 2,800. I believe that's what they say.
Like 2,800 is still a long way away.
I know,
But damn,
but
if there's still K-pop stands in 2,800, it'd probably be a meltdown.
I don't know. I don't actually expect Korea to be this bad. I never really knew the people there were so conservative about
Apparently,
reproducing.
the government is actually paying people to have babies.
Whoa, what?
Yeah, I heard that somewhere. Wait, let me just check on it.
Oh, right, yeah. There's a state allowance program where like expectant couples can claim
Yeah,
up to 420 US dollars to cover like these prenatal expenses.
yeah.
Wow.
Under the new policy, the government will provide 300,000 won, which is 275 US dollars, as a bonus every month to all infants in the first year of their birth, starting 2022. That is the 2022 plan. But there's already been another child plan that's active over there. Like they're so desperate to get the birth rate up, it's actually insane.
I guess there's one way of doing it, like trying to incentivize couples to have babies. But I think that also like brings another problem
That's just
about people being able to
inhumane in a way.
date in the first place.
No, I think that's just like inhumane in a way. Like you're getting
It is though.
you're like
I mean,
you're getting a
you're not really
baby
like
not for like the sake of getting a baby. You're getting a baby for the sake of that you're gonna get money.
financial benefits. But in the long term though, I think most people are like rational enough to see that having a child is like a very expensive outlay. You're not just paying for their care and like, you have to pay for like taking care of their meals, you have to pay for their education, you have to pay for like their needs and wants. For a minimum of 18 years, possibly more, you have to tend to their every need. So like a large portion of your income is going to go to that. So I think that's why a lot of people just don't want to have babies anyway in the first place. It's just like the financial risk then to them is more important than any kind of like affection they could show or any kind of joy they would get from like having offspring.
Yeah, true. That is a thing.
I think
Then
true.
again, I don't. Yeah, go on, Mingzhen.
Yeah. I think people's mindset also changed throughout the years, right? Remember like how Chinese people will always have like more than like I don't know, more than 2 to 3 kids. Like sometimes they will even have an extreme number of like 6 to 7 children. But nowadays you barely see any Chinese family have more than 2 children.
Yeah, that old saying, "Walao, a boy, you have to get a kid before I die. I want to see. I want to hold my grandson." That very Asian thing that Asian aunties and uncles always say.
Yeah. I can actually hear it from
Yeah,
your parents.
yeah. Literally every Asian parent says that. It's insane.
Yeah, but I can specifically hear it from your parents.
Oh God, that might actually be true. It really
You
depends.
insert.
Yeah, but that conservative mindset actually is a problem like this.
Mm.
Well, if anything, the South Korean government should sign them up.
Actually, what surprises me the most is that Japan also has low birth rate. Like considering they do a lot of AV, I thought maybe they would have high birth rate, but guess they have low birth rates. And then
Good God.
they always make
It is
hentai and
very
shit.
surprising if you think of it that way.
Yeah, lah, and then they
But
make
then
hentai
again,
and all that.
they, but then again, they got like two entire states where like the entire like family generation is just screwed, right? Hiroshima and Nagasaki because of the radiation poisoning in the genes, you know.
Oh
So
no.
Shit.
that's a huge contributing factor to why the birth rate could be low and the death rate could be higher. Just from those two states, it's more than enough to decrease it by a few percentile, you know. And it makes complete sense as well. That's just a
There,
lasting effect. Has
there's
the
that.
radiation effects like gone away, or
Yeah.
is it still present?
I think it's still present.
Is it as bad?
Probably not, since like,
That
its
time.
half-life is probably like decreased.
Yeah, it might have
I
gone
mean,
through like 2 circulations, maybe.
no, like possibly like these people, like the offspring, like these generations, like they're probably like living, but like they probably do have like other health issues and health concerns.
Yeah, definitely.
Like
Because just part
possibly
of
maybe like
the
a higher risk of cancer, something things like
yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah.
But then also, right, I think the fact that like Japanese people, like they themselves have like a very high work ethic. Where's the time for dating and where's the time to like settle down and start a family? I think that's also a big factor in this.
Yeah, true. Okay, Migza. So I guess we can wrap up now. Do you have any final thoughts about countries that have high birth rates and low birth rates, and what's your final opinion on this?
Which part are you asking? Get the high birth rate, no birth rate, or what?
Yeah. So do you
Which
think that high birth rates are they good or bad, and low birth rates are they good or bad? Like, what's your stance on, like your final stance on it?
Iceland's a good country with high birth rate. It has the advantages that, but I do say it's pretty good considering that they have enough manpower. But then that also means that there's also less job opportunities for them. And countries with low birth rates, they are also kind of in danger of population decline and also the population aging. So it would be good if they could increase their population aging, and that would be
Okay, so thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the Tonda News podcast. If you liked it, please share it around. If you disliked it, it's okay. You don't have to agree with us all the time. Do give us feedback. Do give us topics. We have a Discord server. You can hit the link in our description, and you can join the server. Post anything that you want over there. That not too vulgar, I guess. Just good news and stuff that we can all talk about and produce content for all of you. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the Thunder Table Podcast. Goodbye.